Alrighty, let's give folks a chance to get in here. We are live. The Witness BCC is live. Behind the mic, live. All right. Folks are coming in here. Okay. We see you. We see you in here. All right. All right. Yeah, folks are coming in here. Folks are rolling in here. Let me give it just a moment more. All right. Give it another moment or two. All right, we are ready to start now. So my name is Ally Henny, and I am Vice President of the Witness, a Black Christian collective, and I am also the host of the Combing the Roots podcast. We are, I guess, I was going to say like excited, happy, use all that kind of language. I'm not really sure how to talk about it. This is a somber moment, and so we're coming to you all in a moment that we're going to speak to. And so we have some guests tonight. We actually have two special guests. I'm going to bring our first guest on. The first guest that we have here is Tyler Burns. Let me give him a chance to get on here. All right. So we got Tyler Burns.
What's up, fam?
He is president of the Witness, a Black Christian collective. And let me see if our other guest pops up here. But what's good or what's cracking right now, Tyler?
It's a lot. It's a lot going on.
It is. There's a lot. There is a lot cracking.
It's a complicated question. Complicated question.
It's very complicated. So tonight we are going to be addressing what's in the room, the elephant in the room, but it's not really an elephant. It's just a thing that has happened. So it's been, what, 2 hours, an hour and a half since the George Floyd, Derek Chauvin murder trial, that whole thing or whatever. I'm not sure. Was it a murder trial? How was it characterized? See, I have to admit that I didn't actually watch it. Today was the first time that I watched anything related to it. But so was it a murder trial? Was it a police brutality trial? What was the nature of it even?
I guess we can call it a murder trial. I've kept it at arm's length as much as I possibly can, just due to the fact that, you know, you don't want to inundate yourself with the deluge of re-traumatizing scenarios and hearing evidence and hearing interrogation and nonsense. And so actually the only time I really took a look at it is when I heard that they were deliberating, and that was yesterday. So as soon as I heard that they were deliberating, I was like, oh, okay, well, now I should probably figure out, what some of the charges might be and things of that nature. So yeah, I guess we can call it a murder trial. Somebody even said in the comments it's a murder trial. So I guess we can call it a murder trial.
I guess we can call it that. So I'm not sure what the terminology for that was, but yeah. So tonight we're discussing the verdict for the murder trial. George Floyd was the brother who was murdered. Who I have not seen the video. I've managed to not see the video for the whole year. I decided after Ahmaud that I wasn't out here trying to watch it, out here trying to watch Black Death. But it's been a year. And I think a lot of America, a lot of the world, if we didn't actually watch the video, then if we didn't actually watch the whole thing, we were aware of what happened. And so now we're here. And so unfortunately our second guest, they're not able to join. Like the thing isn't letting them.
Really?
It's not letting her join. So.
Okay, so keep watching, and I'll at a certain point I'll hop off and let you bring her on, because I think that would be really dope.
Okay, cool.
I want to get her perspective on this. I think it's going to be really helpful. So. But yeah, we can chop it up for a little bit. Then I'll pass the mic to her.
Oh, okay. Okay. Good. Good. Okay. I 10-4. We're here. We're here. We weren't expecting to do this. We weren't.
We
We
were
were.
not, no.
We were not expecting to do this. In fact, Tyler and I had a conversation today where we were talking about, well, what do we do whatever the verdict comes? And so we were thinking that it was maybe going to be, tomorrow or Thursday, and we would still come on our pre-planned conversation, was going to be talking about the Black Liturgies episode. But here we are talking about a verdict. So, I know I asked you how you felt just kind of in general, and I think that we both kind of feel just kind of bewildered and kind of, okay, this is a thing. So just what are some of your reactions
Yeah.
to what happened?
Yeah. So I think a couple of things rise to the surface. So the first one is there is a sense of relief at this particular verdict. All of Black life, it seems, in America is built upon this concept of threat mitigation, harm reduction, survival. And so while nothing in this country is as it should be for us, what we realize is that some outcomes are better than others. Some outcomes are more just than others are, even if they do not reach the standard of what true justice is. And so from a harm reduction standpoint, as a respite from the pain, I breathed a sigh of relief earlier. A sigh of relief in the sense that George Floyd's family at least is able to not suffer the indignity that so many other Black families had. And in this kind of time, in probably the highest profile case of police brutality that we've had in quite some time, if not ever. And so there was that sense, right? So there was relief on one side. And then there was this other sense of impending doom. And I think the reason for this is Willie Jennings talks about this in an essay that I was reading actually earlier this week. And he says that all of Black life is lived in what he calls the breaks. And the breaks almost in between musical movements of violence in this country, that we have completely wholesale as a culture imbibed the ideas that violence is normative, that death, specifically Black death, is required. And that all of Black life lives in the breaks. So we live in respites and moments in between movements of violence. And I think about the concurrent realities of Dante Wright. And I think about the concurrent realities of the young man Anthony in Tennessee. And I think of the Breonna Taylor police officer getting a book deal. I think of all these things and we're moving in respites. We're in respites between massive tragic instances and traumatic instances of violence. And so I think it causes me to ask deeper questions about us and about how we're actually doing. The third thing, and I think our second guest is going to get into this, but, we use words very flippantly. And, I understand what people mean when they say justice, right? Justice came. But here's the truth of the matter. Most of us, if we're honest with ourselves, are new to using that word. And we're newer in the sense of the past decade or so, 8 years, 7, 8 years. Most of us were not, some of us were, and that's awesome. But most of us are not familiar with integrating justice with our belief in Jesus. And so we use those words very flippantly. And is this justice or is this accountability? And justice, how most of us perceive it, is defined by the system that doesn't give it to us. So a system that does not bring justice does not get to define it. And who we see that right here, we see that there has been a conviction for the individual, but who will indict the institution? Who will indict the institution that allows this system to take Black life with abandon and then cry shock, this is not how we trained you. As if the system itself is not set up to subjugate and harass and oppress Black and brown bodies. And so I'm glad for the relief, and I'm most glad for the Floyd family. But if we don't stop calling this justice, a just society would not have allowed George Floyd to be murdered.
Well,
a just society is a society in which Michael Brown and Tamir Rice and Philando Castile and Alton Sterling and Trayvon Martin and Sandra Bland and Renisha McBride and Tatiana Jefferson can live. That's a just system. We haven't received justice. The system has given us a moment of accountability. And there's a difference, y'all. And so America's idea of justice, the unjust system, the yet to be United States that we live in, is not God's idea of justice. And they do not get to trick us into thinking that because they indicted one officer of terror in one of many incidents that we have had to watch and be subjected to trauma because of, they don't get to tell us what justice is. Whole system's guilty.
Look.
That's what I'm thinking right now.
Well, that's deep. Oh my goodness, that is so deep, fam. You know, I look at Amos 24 where it talks about let justice roll like a mighty river. And I agree with what you're saying about there's a difference between justice and accountability. And the way that I envision it is that this is Derek Chauvin being convicted is one drop. It's not justice. It's one drop in the river that will roll of justice that will roll down. So we can't sit here and act like I've seen it already. And I think that a lot of our white siblings, and maybe even some of the Black ones too, but I think a lot of our white siblings see, okay, well, you know, we didn't get George Zimmerman. We didn't get the people that killed Breonna Taylor. We didn't even get anything with the people with the system that killed Sandra Bland. We haven't gotten anything for Tatiana. We haven't gotten anything for Rekia Boyd. We haven't gotten anything for Renisha McBride. We got a little bit of something maybe for Botham Jean, but like overall, there's just the system hasn't really done anything. So you feel like, oh, well, cool. Like this guy was guilty and we saw it on the video. And so now like we can rejoice and we can be happy because justice was served, and justice was not served. Like it took there being multiple videos. It took literal children being traumatized. It took a crowd of people watching, a crowd of people standing there for how long? For half an hour at least, watching this happen. And there was still questions. They were still trying to blame this Black man for his death. And that's more than just, well, it was the tactic of the defense, blah, 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 blah. It was America that still had to be convinced. In fact, just this morning, I didn't read all the comments or whatever, but a Facebook friend of mine, somebody that I attended church with many years ago, had said something on Facebook. Oh, probably like 4 or 5 days ago she was just like, I don't know how any Christian can watch this trial and see that this man isn't guilty and say that there shouldn't be justice, like there's a problem. So she said that, and I was like, ooh, her comment, their RIP, her comment section, right?
That comment section up. It's up.
This is a white lady, but I was like, you know,
it's above us now.
RIP her is above me now. RIP her comment section. RIP her notifications. And, you know, sure as shooting this morning, I looked, and there were people that were talking about due process, and they were like, "Oh, some of the people I blocked," so I was just like, whatever, because I was only like see like little parts of the conversation, but they were talking about due process and all this other type of stuff, and so I don't usually do this, but I was just like because she stood with me in some different moments and stuff, and so I was like, I'm gonna go ahead and message her. So I messaged her and I was like, "What you said?" Because I wasn't gonna jump on that thread because I don't have the spoons to do that. So I was just like, "What you said was absolutely right. I don't understand how these people can do this." And I was just like, these people are out here talking about due process for Derek Chauvin, but where's due process for George Floyd? Where was due process for him? So people want to talk about the system and how well the system worked. Like I saw a well-known white pastor who was like, well, this is what law and order looks like, blah 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 blah. And I'm just like, no, it's not. The whole system, the system is broken. The system is guilty. The system, like this is like, yeah, there are individual actors. There were individual bad actors that did some things, and that's wrong. And I think that where I'm at is I'm having difficulty. I'm gonna be controversial here for a second, but I'm having difficulty really, I guess, celebrating this in any measure, because I am someone that I think that the system is wrong. And so I think that the idea of incarcerating people, putting people in cages, treating people like animals, subjecting them to that system, I think that that's wrong.
Right.
And so I do think that there should be consequences. I'm not really sure. I haven't fully visualized, I haven't fully thought through what consequences for this type of thing should be. But it's a system that we have, but the system in itself is flawed. But going back to my original point, so the idea that somebody's found guilty of something, and then he's going to spend 40 years in a cage for something, I don't like to me that doesn't feel like any kind of justice whenever George Floyd is dead. Like he's dead, like that man is dead, and somebody gets to spend 40 years in a cage for that, and that just doesn't seem like a fair that doesn't seem fair. That doesn't seem just. That doesn't seem like anything. Now I don't know what the alternative is.
Right.
I don't know what the alternative is. I don't know what that looks like. But what I can say is that, going back to my original point, it took all of that. It took a video close up in high definition for that conclusion to be reached. We haven't even so that happened. We got justice in that situation, or we got accountability in that situation, but 13 miles, 11 miles from where that verdict was read, Daunte Wright was killed.
Right.
Over next major city over in Chicago, Adam Toledo was shot, had his hands up, and was this little Hispanic boy shot in an alley here in Chicago. So this is one person. This is one person who got, according to the system, according to whatever, that they got what they deserved accordingly. But the system is still guilty. The system is still there. So my question is, what do we do? What's the next step? What's the next thing? Not necessarily, I'm not talking like necessarily practical next step. If you want to speak to that, that's fine. But I mean, what I see is that there's a whole entire system that is still intact.
Yes.
A police officer can go out tomorrow and do the same thing that Derek Chauvin did. Could do the same thing. I would even say in the same jurisdiction.
Yes.
And might not be convicted. And that's a problem. And the other problem is the hearts and minds problem, which is the pervasive problem that people's consciences, I'm keep it buck. White people's consciences are so seared that they can, and a few choice Negroes, their consciences are so seared to Black death that you can watch somebody for 9 minutes and 29 seconds or 8 minutes and 46 seconds, whatever the amount of time was, you can watch that and then and not be mad. You can watch that
My,
and
my,
not
my.
understand why people are tearing stuff up in Chicago, and why people were tearing stuff up in Milwaukee, and why people were tearing stuff up in Minneapolis, and why people were tearing stuff up in DC. You can watch that and just be okay, and your spirit
My.
not be moved, and your spirit not be disturbed. You can watch that and still be like, oh, but we need due process. Of course, the white man is going to get due process. That's not even a question. They were going to drag him out and lynch him, but George Floyd got lynched. But George Floyd got lynched.
Wow.
He didn't even get the chance to sit in front of a jury. Sitting in front of a jury, that's white. That is white privilege. That's privilege to be able to sit in front of a jury for your crimes. So anyway, let me hush here.
Wow.
But what do we do? What do we
word.
visualize? What do we think? What do we think when we get up in the morning tomorrow, Tyler?
What a word. Oh my goodness. What a word. Yolanda Pierce, the dean of Howard University's School of Divinity, and she wrote a book called In My Grandmother's House, which I'm reading right now, which is phenomenal. And she said that our tears are all the emotions that we don't have words for. It's the tension of all the emotions we don't have words for. And I really hope that our people can weep well now. Yeah, I really hope we can weep well. I hope we can cry like we're supposed to cry. I hope we can lament for real now, knowing that there was accountability in some sense, that there was a moment of relief. And so for us, Ally, I'm thinking about our tears today. I'm just thinking about our tears. I'm thinking about all that pain. I'm thinking about all that, all that feeling that we have that we can't put into words. I'm thinking about that. And I just want our people to be able to cry and for those tears not to be wasted. I want us to be able to weep well. To that point, it's so interesting. It's so interesting that you mentioned this, because I was reading an article right before we got on that my friend Bradford sent to me and a group of us in a group chat, and he said, yo, y'all got to read this. So it's an article entitled Derek Chauvin, the Derek Chauvin verdict isn't justice, it's self-preservation.
Ooh.
And I wish I could just read this article for y'all, because it's just wild. And so it's very interesting, right? So the author is saying, this is really interesting because it is easy to throw Derek Chauvin under the bus as a means to convince people that the system works. When police officers kill with wanton abandon every week, every month, every year, and when one gets convicted in a high-profile case, now he bears all the sins of the system. Rather than the system itself being interrogated and questioned. And when we get to the place where we have allowed people to become the representation of systemic issues which we refuse to address, we refuse to deal with, we have to ask the question, when will we be so exhausted that this continuation of this status quo is no longer acceptable? It is no longer acceptable. And we are prepared to put things on the line to ensure that our children and generations that come behind us do not feel this pain. And do not have to question if their tears will matter and if their bodies will be abused by this unjust system. And there's not a sense of it. We're not exhausted yet. We're not. As a society, Black people are. But as a society, our society is not exhausted. We are exhausted. We're way past that point, centuries ago.
Mm.
But the society is not exhausted. And it's so interesting because the responses show you that society is not exhausted. Watch the Christian responses.
Mm-hmm.
Well, praise God. On to the next.
Well,
Okay, now your attention on this trial and the energy that you put into this trial and watching it and praying should now be shifted toward Dante Wright, because he got a video too, and his life mattered too, and he has a family, and he's created in the image of God too. But they don't think like that. They think we did it.
mm-hmm.
And you have a premature celebration about a system that still terrorizes. Do you
Mm.
think that we will be more relieved or more at peace when a police officer or law enforcement pulls us over? Heavens no.
Nope.
There's no way we will be. And so I think, and what I'm getting at here, y'all, is we have to reimagine the system and our place in it.
Mm.
And the best of Black people who have gone before us, the best of Black Christians who have gone before us, have reimagined their place in the system itself.
Mm.
And reminded themselves of their intrinsic worth and value. And that is an in-house community project. It is a communal project for us to reimagine ourselves in a system that would actually value our bodies. It does not exist currently, and it never has. So we must reimagine what it can look like. And so let me say this as a word of caution before I kick it back to you and probably bring on our next guest. But let me say this as a word of caution. Be very careful about labeling necessary changes to reimagine who we can be in this system and who we should be in this unjust society and country. Be very careful about labeling that radical or militant. Be very careful. The system that requires question about a life that was taken in front of all of our faces is a radically dangerous, unjust system. Let it be radical if it needs to be. Be careful about dismissing radical changes as wrong, as unchristian. We need table flipping believers.
Mm. Look.
We talk about flipping tables, but we never do it. We need table flipping believers.
Look.
Don't call people who are prison abolitionists. You may not agree with them. Don't call them wild. Don't otherize them. Don't otherize them. We need to have a dialogue, because this, whatever this is, ain't working. So I ain't defending this. So you got something else? Okay, well, I want to hear it. Let's have a conversation about this. No, we need to talk. Because if you imagine feeling like this, oh, I don't want to feel like this anymore. And if you're sick and tired of being sick and tired, it's time for us to make a radical change so that equity and justice won't be radical. Look, stop telling people, man, y'all doing too much and you just this and oh, you messing with. They trying to save our lives. And we, their own people, are saying it's too much. When we know the names, we know the names. We've seen them. We've read them. We know their faces.
I'm gonna add to that, because I was gonna add to it. I would stir the pot.
Go
that
ahead.
Let's not try to baptize a white supremacist system as Christian just because it's what we're used to and because it's what is normative. And so oftentimes, whenever those quote unquote radical or quote unquote militant voices come up, the first thing that Christians of all stripes and colors do is, well, is that a Christ-centered perspective? Is that a biblical perspective? Is that whatever? But you're not questioning the system that was literally created on white supremacy. You're not questioning that. You want to preserve that system. You want to work within that system, but you are questioning the alternative. and you're looking at somebody is presenting a different way. Somebody is coming to you and presenting a different way. We want to be incredulous, and we want to get out our scripture, and we want to proof text, and we want whatever. Now, hear what I'm saying. I'm not saying hear what I'm saying here. Yes, we should look at
Yes.
what we decide to do as Christians, what movements we yoke ourselves to, everything.
Absolutely.
We should yoke that with what the scripture says. We should yoke that with where our conscience allows us to go. What I am speaking against is what I feel like is a reflexive reaction by Black Christians, especially and specifically, but it's also true for white Christians too, where there is this reflexive need to automatically try to baptize something, and to automatically be, you have to make sure that it's biblically grounded. You have to make sure that it's whatever, and I feel like that is a form of legalism. I feel like it's a form of spiritual bondage, because again, you will question, you will tear something out, you will tear somebody down for being militant or for being radical, or
Mama.
even you will look at the tone, and you'll hear the tone and be like, oh, well, I don't like the tone, or I don't like who is in the movement. So because I don't agree with some of the people who are in the movement and what some of those people look like, who they love, who they're
Mm-hmm.
married to, how
Mm-hmm.
they present themselves, what words they use or whatever,
Mm-hmm.
you want to discount a movement on a genetic fallacy, on a fallacy that says, well, because the people who the movement is coming from, it can't be right. There can't be anything redemptive about it because it's coming from people who make me uncomfortable. And so
Yes.
I think that we need to, that as Black Christians, we need to be very wary of saying, well, propping up the current system that we have, that, hey, guess what, was built by people who profess Christ but weren't living a Christ-centered or a biblical or Bible-centered
Right,
life.
which is very interesting. Yes.
But we're okay with that. We want to try to fix that system, and we want to try to whatever.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying I don't know what the answer is. I just, like you said, the system that we have isn't working. Yet we want to keep we want to keep on going. And the last thing I'll say is common grace. I mean, common grace, folks. And I think that Black Christians need a robust theology of common grace, and understanding that, and somebody just said it here in the comments too, that all truth is God's truth.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so regardless of who it comes from, we can take the truth.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, if you need to, throw a little Jesus on it, if it makes you feel good to do that. But let's not throw people away. Let's not throw abolitionists. Let's not throw activists. Let's not throw people away, or throw movements, or throw ideas away just because it makes our little Christian bubble feel uncomfortable.
Yeah, and I think what's so important, and this is the last thing I'll say before we get our second guest in, but what I think is so important is, we have to ask the question of what is our hesitation and our fear. I think there is always a necessity for believers and leaders, spiritual leaders, Christian leaders, to think about the spiritual ramifications of anything, right,
Mm-hmm.
and everything. I think that is right and true and good. I think what really resonates about what you're saying, though, is oftentimes our fear of connecting ourselves to a movement, or to protest or to march, is rooted in what will white Christians say about me being here. And so our ideas of questioning whether or not something is appropriately orthodox or Christ-centered is the idea of, oh, is this Christ-centered, is a good idea in and of itself. But our idea of Christ-centered has often been influenced by people who have held spiritual authority over us, and who have said that even the Black churches that we go to are not faithful enough for them. And so it causes us to question. And so I think this is so important, is how do we decolonize this table and make sure that this table, we are having robust theological, biblical discussions that center the Black theological perspective. and not the white gatekeepers who have told us that we're not orthodox enough. And so sometimes people say, man, I want to wrestle with this because I think it's important for me to make sure that I'm involved in something that connects with my own convictions of the Bible and Christ. And I say, great. And other times they're afraid. What will they say?
Mm-hmm.
What will they say about me? Will I be lumped into this camp? What videos will they make about me? What subtweets will they give to me? And now if you're starting to fear people.
Mm-hmm.
And if you fear people, you shouldn't have become a servant of Christ. Right?
Well,
That's Bible.
well,
So that is I think what resonates so much about that, because sometimes we have to really check ourselves and be honest about the fact that, man, maybe what we're sensing is a hesitation that comes from white Christian, norms that are extra biblical than
mm,
biblical. So there's so much to unpack about that, so much to get into. But a couple of people asked in the comments, the article I believe is Derek Chauvin's verdict is not about justice. It's not justice. It's self-preservation. I think it's on the Intelligencer blog, if I'm not mistaken. That is something I'll probably share it on my my IG story once we're off. But yo, Ally, thank you for this. I'm glad we hopped on. You've encouraged me. My spirit has been lifted in our conversation, and just seeing the Black Christian comments. Y'all are why we do this. So thank you so much, Ally, for going ahead and pushing me to go ahead and hop on and press live. Thank you.
Yeah, hang around just in case we have technical difficulties.
I will.
Hang around. All righty.
Peace.
So, yeah, so much. Look, y'all, this is a lot, fam. This is a whole lot. So for the second part of this discussion, I want to bring in someone who is new to the Witness. Well, look at my head wrap. There we go. My head wrap on here looking all silly. So anyway, so I want to bring in somebody who is new to the Witness fold, to the new Witness bubble. I can't talk. Let me just bring her on. I can't speak. So let me bring her on. All right, we're going live here. This is the world premiere. The whole world. History has its eyes. Here we go. Okay.
Hello.
So this is Bria Perry. She is in North Carolina. She is really, really super awesome. She is the content distributor for the Witness Black Christian Collective. And so I mentioned where she's from. She's a Southerner. She's got a little Southern accent and stuff going, which I love. I'm country and Midwestern and whatever.
I don't even realize I have a Southern accent. I'm like,
you have a little one.
What is it?
You have a little one. But I am so happy that you're here. Bria, say hi to everybody.
Hello, everyone. I am excited to talk to y'all, and yeah, I'm honored to be here. This has been great. So look, I pulled out my notebook. I started taking notes because y'all just be out here just coming from my life every single time. This is why our staff meetings run over, because y'all just like come for our lives every single time. Great. We love it.
Yeah. Whenever Tyler and I get together, it can be something. If we're not fighting, which is something that Tyler and I
yeah, sometimes mom and dad fight.
We argue a lot. Whenever we don't argue, I fully own that we can be we can be a little bit much together. But Bria, it is such an honor. You say it's an honor for you to be on. It's such an honor to have you here. Bria's been working on our team since December. And so she's the person that most of the time, whenever you see stuff out there on social media, she's the person who has written the copy for it. She's the person who's put it in the thing to get it going. She's designed some of our graphics, some of our different stuff. So I'm really excited to have her on here, and hopefully y'all will be able to see and hear more from Bria. But the occasion that Bria is here, of course, we are here discussing the Derek Chauvin verdict. And how are you feeling about that? I know that you had some feelings going into it.
Yeah. I think that I went into it because so like both you and Tyler said, I had not really been really paying attention to the entire trial. I was like, there is no need to re-traumatize myself. We kind of there's two things that can happen, and we'll be there when it happens. So I had kind of like shut myself off from that, but then saw that the results, the verdict would come in today. And first, whenever this happens ever, I have to decide first to get off of like digital social media, internet for just a second, just to decide how I'm feeling before I start taking in everybody else's emotions. Because sometimes everybody else, when you're seeing everybody else talk, and which is not a bad thing, but whenever everybody else is posting on things, you can absorb their emotions in ways that are not authentic to what you're actually feeling. So I had to decide that for myself. And basically I told myself, like, look, it's either going to be guilty or not guilty. And regardless of what happens, we know that this one decision is not going to change that this whole system is guilty. And the work is still the work. The work is still ahead. My work in organizing for the liberation of my people has not changed. Our work, I should say our work, because it is a collective work, has not changed. And so I immediately started praying, of course, for the family and friends, because they're at the forefront of this, especially his daughter, especially his mother, and everybody in the city, really, the community, because this is not just grief for the family and friends. This is grief for the entire city of Minneapolis. This is grief for the entire state. And of course, it's collective grief for Black people. So I just prayed that we would be able to lament well and not skip, I'll say, skip steps in the lament and the grief process, to really like let it settle in whatever ways we needed to do that. And then when the verdict came in, I think there's only so much preparation you can do for yourself, because sometimes your emotions are uncontrollable. And so of course, I can decide all these things and know all these things, but when the verdict came in, to be honest with you, I don't know if I breathed any easier. I think that, and of course, those who felt like they were breathing easier, of course, you're valid in that. But I think that, or I won't say that, I'll say that I breathed easier, but not because of the trial, not because of the verdict, but because I know that there's eternal peace in being able to rest in Jesus. But I cannot rest in whatever the system decides to give us. I can't rest in a system that was built on the mutilated backs of my ancestors. That's never going to be able to dispatch justice for me, no matter what they do or say or decide to try to rehabilitate the image that they have to the public. It's not just like
rehabilitate the image.
Right. Like it's the, I'm trying to figure out if I want to say this. I will say it. I believe that people are able to be redeemed, but systems that are built on the exploited labor and the backs, again, of our mutilated ancestors is never going to be redeemed. At some point, it's going to have to burn in hell. So I'm never going to rest in something that I know is going to burn in hell at some point for all eternity. So my rest is in Jesus. It's not in this system.
Amen. And you named something that I think is very important, because there's definitely a tension. I mean, there are Black people who are celebrating this verdict, and I want to hold space for that. But my feelings, my emotions, I think, were very similar to how you felt. That I just kind of watched. I was bracing myself for what happens if it's not guilty, not guilty, not guilty. what is my reaction going to be? And, and I'm thinking about this, as my children are in the house, or were coming in the house, right as they were getting ready to announce the verdict. My oldest was on her way home from school and everything. And so I'm just like, what is my physical reaction going to be? What's my emotional reaction going to be? And I think that you named something that's very important there, that yeah, there are people who are celebrating. There are people who are happy that I was watching some of the press conference and stuff that the Attorney General had, that the family and the Reverend Sharpton and all these other people had afterward, and I could tell that they felt very light. And I again respect that, hold space for that. They have been through it, right? They have utterly have been through it. They deserve to have moments to laugh. They deserve to have moments of levity or whatever. But I could not help but still feel the tension, right? And to still feel like the system is still intact. The system is still there. Yep. And you and Tyler both in different ways hit on this idea of, okay, he was found guilty, the system's still there, but even there's almost a performative element to Chauvin being found guilty. And I can't overlook that. I can't overlook that, okay, one person was found guilty, and for what it took for them to be found guilty. And the thing that gets me too is a friend of mine named Ernest. He was talking about how he was just like, I'm not going to watch these videos. I think he was talking about like Dante Wright and whatever he was, and I think also Adam Toledo. He was just like, I'm not going to watch these videos. These videos have become modern day snuff films, and I'm not here for it. And I was like, ooh, okay, yes, that makes sense. But that it takes having that on film, and we watch that for there to even be a drop of justice. I keep coming back to that, and I cannot get past. I keep coming back to it, and I can't get past that we said that it took watching a person lose their life in order for so what happens then all the times where there's not a camera present? What happens to all the people who are killed in a back alley somewhere by the police who aren't wearing a body camera, or who they turn their body camera off, or they obstruct whatever, where there's somebody who doesn't have a cell phone out, where the security footage is grainy? What happens to the people like the Ahmaud Arbery's who are running on back roads? I'm from the country. Ahmaud Arbery is the sum of all fears for me. I again, I'm from the country. I'm from rural Missouri, and it ain't nothing to be going someplace and to end up on a back country road someplace where ain't nobody there. There's been times where I've been on the way places and have gotten lost and have ended up places. Yep. And that's the sum of all fears for me, to be on a back road someplace and get shot and killed. And the only reason why we had the video is because one of the people who killed him was the one who took the video. That's it. And so I'm like, what happens? What does justice look like then when we don't have the evidence out there, where we don't have the out there just live and living color in high definition? What does justice look like then?
That's deep. And I think that specifically when you're talking about the videos, there's this tension between for the victim's sake, I feel like I need to bear witness to your pain. But that doesn't mean I have to watch you get murdered. I can really just choose to believe that what happened and still bear witness to the fact that your life was taken unjustly. And so, yeah, I think that there's this tension that people are dealing with, but there's also like, you have to remember that looking at, like, watching stuff like that is so dehumanizing. Like, it's not normal to literally watch a real life human, not somebody on TV, not a movie, not a fictional story, a real life person on this earth who was living and breathing, get their life taken. It, like, that's not normal. And I think that there's a level of, and this is where I say the media is culpable, because they know that and they are trying. Listen, I studied journalism only for 4 years. I've only been in college for 4 years, but I studied journalism. I know this stuff is intentional. They sensationalize this stuff for their views and for their profits, but also knowing that you're going to get desensitized to it, and they can play it over and over and over again, and it's going to get them advertising dollars. It's going to get them all this different stuff.
Speak on it. Keep on.
Knowing that every time you watch it, it desensitizes you again. And the next time you watch it, or the next 5 times you watch it, eventually it's like you're not going to have any kind of human reaction. Completely desensitized, completely dehumanized. And we have to resist that. We have to stand against that. And it also brings to mind the fact that when our ancestors were literally getting lynched, hung from trees, white people put that stuff on postcards and sent it to each other. Like, it was entertainment for them. So there's no reason for any of that to be. There's no reason to watch the videos. There's no reason for it to even. I mean, yes, there's a reason for it to be public for the sake of the trial, I suppose. But there's no reason. Yes, just like the mass shootings, all of that. So yeah, I think there's a tension, but we also have to name what it really is, and what it's doing to our ability to see the full image of God in each other. And yeah, what does justice look like? What you said with when there is no evidence, and that's a tough question. That's a tough thing to even just sit with. And that's the thing, like, there's just so many, just like, yeah, I guess there's just so many, like, questions that you really just have to be okay with the tension and the discomfort of sitting with, and maybe not knowing the answer, and then allow your imagination to expand for what justice could look like. And I think you and Tyler were talking about what if anything is the practical thing to do in this situation. And I always pray, even though of course this is not the way I would want it to happen, I always pray that more people, you guys were talking about being radical, I hope that more people are radicalized by this, because while there's a community of people who of course use that term pejoratively, the original way that the term radical was used, like the root word radix from the Latin term root word radix, means returning to the root of something, getting to the root of something. That's what radical politics is all about. It's getting to the root of whatever it is you are organizing for or against. And I'm really just kind of held and grounded by the fact that Jesus himself, the incarnate God, in Luke 6 told us that a tree is known by its fruit. For a good tree does not bear bad fruit, and a bad tree does not bear good fruit. So why are you going to look at a bad tree with bad roots and expect it to bear fruit, to bear an apple that you can just pick from the tree and eat and it's going to be good?
Ooh,
you can't do that.
That's the word. Come on.
I am grounded by that scripture, and no matter what people try to say about how unbiblical it is to be radical, and is that even biblical, and all the legalism and all this different stuff that you guys were talking about, it absolutely is. It's right there in scripture. We can talk about it. Yeah.
But you talk about the lynching aspect of that, and that the aspect of our lynching being entertainment for people, and it being entertainment specifically for white people. Because I mean, we weren't out here like, oh, we gonna go to a lynching. We're gonna pack a picnic lunch and go and make it a whole event and a whole spectacle on Easter which that literally happened. Some in Springfield, Missouri, that literally happened.
Wow.
There was an Easter
On
lynching
Easter?
on Easter. People
Wow.
went to church and then went downtown to watch somebody be lynched. That for sure happened in 1906. That is, I think that you are so right about the dehumanization and the desensitization that happens when we view Black death over and over and over and over and over and over and over again, and it's put out there, and the still shots and the videos, and you can go see these things on YouTube. Like I referenced earlier, I have a friend who talked about them as being snuff films, and that is so dehumanizing to us. And I fear that we are becoming bloodthirsty because of that. Our society is becoming bloodthirsty because now we aren't going to believe the testimony of the people who were there, of the people who witnessed it. We're not going to believe that testimony. We're not going to believe the testimony of the dead body lying on the ground. We need to have the blood. We need to be able to see it on the screen. Now, don't get me wrong. I think that having the police body cameras, if we had a police, Derek Wilson, Darren Wilson, if he was wearing a body camera whenever he murdered Michael Brown, we would be having a different conversation.
Oh, absolutely.
I'm not against the fact that we know about Adam Toledo and that the Chicago police the crooked behind Chicago police, FYI, they're crooked as heck, that they tried to cover it up, but the body cam footage was right there, and the family demanded for the footage. I believe it was the family demanded to see the footage. I think that's important. That's important.
Yeah.
There's an aspect of bearing witness that's important. My question then becomes, at what point does it stop being bearing witness and does it become bloodlust? Woo! Because you can watch something one time to bear witness to what it is. But when does it become bloodlust? Whenever we're playing it over and over and over and over and over and over again. We're playing the audio from it over and over and over and over and over again. And that is an issue. But girl, that exegesis that you talked about, that exegeting the root and the tree and the fruit and the whatever. Listen, oh my goodness.
If you want to talk scripture, I can get into scripture. We can.
Okay. Get in the book. Get in the book.
Yeah. I think whenever my biggest maybe not concern, but I guess hope is that this doesn't, and I guess this is why I have a hard time, I'll say this, for the day of, whatever it is, whether it's a trial, conviction, verdict, whatever, all emotions are valid. I don't ever want to be that person that's going to police the way someone is handling it and taking it in. But tomorrow, or maybe next week, my foot ain't coming off your neck. I'm challenging people to really, if you are serious about the fact that you want this oppression to end, we have to organize for it. We have to, I can't remember who said this, but it could have been a dead president. I hope it wasn't, but I'm gonna say it anyway. We have to organize, or people who love peace have to organize as well as people who love war. We have to organize for our liberation. And what I think really kind of grounds me as well is knowing that we have elders out there who have been seeing this stuff and reliving this stuff since the early 1900s, since the 1910s, 20s, 30s, 40s, and they are tired. I mean, of course, we're all tired, but they are tired, I know, of reliving the same thing decade after decade after decade after generation after generation. And so I'm organizing so that you, my elders, can rest, and you don't have to keep this stuff. And not just for my elders, for our children, and for future generations. But I think so much about our elders who may not be in that kind of fight anymore. Because they're traumatized and they're tired and they want to rest, and that's valid. I'm fighting and I'm organizing for your liberation too. And we have elders out there who are still in the fight. Angela Davis is in there. We got political prisoners who are organizing on the inside and the outside of the prisons that have been keeping them there for 60 years. And I'm reminded of them all the time. But really I really want to be able to, I think that's just what holds me, is knowing that, is knowing that I want my elders to really be able to.
Wow, that is so great, Bria. And you said something that I think is really important, is that we have to organize for it. In my neighborhood, I passed a building recently that said something to the effect of that it was something like, study is the key to organization, or study informs organization. And so it was put much better on the building. I wish I could remember the exact quote, because I'm trying to say it and I'm butchering the quote, but the idea is that it was painted on a building, and the idea is that in order for us to organize, I think it was like study feeds or fuels organization or whatever, but the idea is like, if we're going to organize, we have to study. We have to know. And this isn't to be classist. It's not to be ableist. It's not. Study might look different for different people. I think that's study according to your ability, but being informed of different ideas for liberation. Being informed of different types of praxis. You can't just see something on social media. You can't just see people talking about abolition on social media and let that be the full information that you have. Is you say, somebody says abolish the police, that doesn't sit in my spirit, right? And then you go on. And you go on and you dismiss it, or you look at who it's coming from and you decide, I'm not sure about that person. That person's not even a Christian, or that person is like a Christian, but they don't seem to be living like the Christian life or whatever. And we dismiss it. It requires us to become informed and to inform and educate ourselves, because you said something very, very good earlier about liberation being a collective effort. And something that I've been saying, I've told you the story. I've told different people the story about how I was at a protest last year. I was at an organized, and it wasn't even really an event. It was just kind of a pop-up protest in my neighborhood last year that happened. And as I was sitting and listening to all the people who were talking, I realized, like, oh my gosh, we are in sore need of leadership. Like, yes, this is as a people, like, yes, this is a pop-up. This is a bunch of Negroes just happened to be driving by someplace and saw some people sitting out there. And so it's all like, we're all going to gather. No, there weren't any aims, there weren't any whatever right there in the moment. But in listening to different people talk, listening to kind of what was on their hearts and on their minds, I was like, we are a people that is in sore need of not just leadership, but for us to have knowledge, to have zeal according to knowledge.
Yeah.
And because it's a collective effort, and we all have different lanes.
Mm-hmm.
We all have different things that I believe that we're called to do. Some of us are called to do that hard, thankless work of bridge building, of being there with our white siblings in Christ and holding their hands and helping them along the way. They're helping them to understand what racism is, and helping them to divest from a system that is harmful, to help them to identify within themselves their complicity within the system. That is some people's work. And we should not dismiss that work. I think that some people who work in liberation, my low battery notice. I'm supposed to be hooked to a charger, but I'm not. But my charger ain't working for me right now. This happens every week. You think I would just know that I was going live, I would just charge my phone. So anyway, but some of us in the work of liberation. We look at the people who are building bridges to white people, and we want to down that. We want to be like, why are you doing this? Why are you whatever? But there are so many different lanes to this work. There are people who are community organizers. There's people who are educators. There are people who are in the streets. There are people who are working within care and mercy ministry or whatever, or what have you. And there's so many different ways and different things that we can do to organize. But the idea is that we should organize. And that we should, something that kills me is that sometimes we undo one another's work, right? We undo because we're working from, maybe different principles or different practices, and we'll sit and we'll undo one another's work. We'll confuse one another. We'll confuse the white people. We'll confuse everybody. But this idea of our liberation is bound up in one another, and whether we view it as the Black collective, or whether we extend that to our siblings who are brown and indigenous and people of color, Middle Eastern, North African, whether we extend it to them, or whether we even extend the connection of our liberation up to white people, whatever our ideas are on that, we are not free until we're all free. We're not free. Nobody's free until we're all free. We're not free until we can organize for it and say, hey. So I'll let you have the last word on this, Bria, and we'll wrap it up.
I get the last word.
You get the last word, girl.
Well, I just want to say that I am in constant, fervent prayer for wherever we are collectively at this time, just the community of Black folks in general, but even extending out into that. Just praying that we would be able to sit with our complex emotions and feel them out together. And again, like I was saying before, to not skip steps in the process of grief and lament, and to not, to not feel like we have to rush ourselves in getting over or whatever it is that people are going to say in these next few days. People are going to say, like, hey, like Tyler was saying, like, hey, we got a verdict, let's rejoice. You ain't got to do that, and in fact you shouldn't do that. I'll say that, and just what we were saying as far as organizing and reading and studying for our liberation, like, we got to commit to that, y'all. And it's not a form of us trying to be elitist or classist or anything. But look, there was a reason the Black Panthers had a whole list of books that you had to read before you could get in that organization. Listen, we got to read, we got to study. And I'll say too that what you were saying about undoing each other's work, that also comes from us being individualistic, even in trying to work for our collective liberation, and saying that, like, oh, I need to go and start my own organization, even though I haven't researched the 10 organizations that are in my city. So maybe start there. If you don't know where to start, you start there. There are organizations. I promise you, there are people who are already doing the work that you are passionate about, that is near to your heart. So before you go and say, I need to go and start my own thing and get this whole, entrepreneurial kind of capitalistic spirit of let me go and start my own thing, go and join an organization that is right down the street from your neighborhood. That's really all I got to say.
Well,
may the Lord bless you and keep you, and let us be liberated.
Ooh, Jesus.
That's it.
Yes, Shondo. Okay, well, we gonna leave it there then. That was a good word. Thank you so much, Bria, for joining us. Thank you, Tyler, for joining us for Behind the Mic. Hopefully next week's Behind the Mic, if we do it next week, we'll have to see what's going on. But thank you for joining us for Behind the Mic.
Absolutely, it's been an honor, Saints.
Yes, peace.
Thank you, Ricky.